While they're in effect, of course, they can also be rescinded. So they, yes, I mean, so that an executive order, what the president giveth, the president can taketh away. And so the question is the scope of what the president giveth. You know, it is simply true, Bruce is exactly right, that there has been a movement in favor of unilateral executive prerogative. It's you know, from the executive's perspective, it's so much neater, right? I mean, it's so much cleaner, it's so much easier to just assert the power and get it done than have to mess with this, you know, cumbersome, clumsy thing called Congress. And the extent to which they use that, there is a legitimate scope for executive orders. Obviously there are. Nobody's suggesting that there isn't. The extent to which power is abused and encroaches on the legitimate role of Congress, then you have a problem. And you have a greater problem if that executive order purports to be secret, or in fact is kept secret, right? So the devil's in the details. You can undo that which is bad, but much mischief can come from the practice.
Yeah, very back here, Bob. One second.
Now, it's bad enough to issue an executive order in secret. It's a secret law, but I was at a hearing that Senator Feingold held on secret law. And this administration also claims authority to issue an executive order that's published and everybody thinks in effect, and then secretly to rescind it and classify the rescission. So what the true policy is not what is purportedly represented in the unrevoked executive orders. So you can be tricked into thinking that an executive order is in effect when it's in fact voided. Reminds me of the practice of the Emperor Caligula, who used to put laws high on walls that no one could see to trick them into thinking the law was something different than it was. But imagine that. This is the United States of America. The president issues an executive order and secretly rescinds it and says, you can't know that.
Thank you. Attorney Margulies, thank you very much for your speech. I was here last year and bought your book. It was very interesting. I have a suggestion and a question. First of all, my suggestion is related to the number of people that are here today. The table at which I'm sitting has people from California, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. My suggestion is that all of us email our senators and representatives and say, end this illegal war and impeach George Bush. We know that the Congress will respond to people writing to them, and if we all do that, then we'll get that. Secondly, because of my involvement last year, have become involved, and now I'm a delegate to the Republican National Convention for Dr. Ron Paul, and thank you for that, but somebody tell me what the hell to do when I get there. That's it.
Okay, well, I certainly can't respond to the second one. But let me say something. One of the reasons that I am more hopeful than I think the numbers would otherwise warrant is that the lesson of political science in the last couple of decades is that you rarely need 51%, 50% plus one to affect sweeping change in the country. That's just, it doesn't need to be that way. The concerted, thoughtful influence of a smaller number of people can be extraordinarily important. And so you are exactly right in your recommendation. It's not simply necessary, for instance, it's impeachment or nothing. How about this one? Let me just give you one. As you know, there is a criminal investigation into the destruction by the CIA of the tapes of the interrogation of a number of people who were waterboarded, right? We know, according to the administration, 3 people were waterboarded, hundreds of hours of tapes were made, and they were destroyed. Well, why isn't there a hearing on what the content of those tapes would be? Right? Not just a criminal investigation into whether a law was broken in the destruction of the tapes, but let's find out what was on the tapes. Why don't we call in the people, the intelligence community knows who they are, call in the people who did the waterboarding and put them under oath and say, tell us what happened. Look, why don't we let the American people decide whether waterboarding is legal? Well, you got to know what it is. Let's decide whether this interrogation was lawful and legitimate. The administration says it was fine. To which the answer, if you're a lawyer, is, okay, play the tape. Well, we don't have the tape anymore. So let's just bring the people in who were there. We know there were FBI. We know this from the not just from me just pulling it out of the air. We know from the Glenn Fine, who is the Inspector General of the FBI, who recently released a 438-page report. He doesn't identify the people that were there, but he knows the people who were present and conducted these interrogations. Let's just find out what happened. You want to do it in closed session? Okay, we can argue about whether it should be in closed session, but let's create a record. You don't have to impeach anybody to do that. And why is that a Democratic thing instead of a Republican thing? Let's just have accountability. The fact is, it's nobody's thing. Neither Democrats or Republicans are calling for that.
Mr. Margulies, thank you very much for being here. I have the utmost respect for the work that you're doing, and I agree with about 99.9% of what you had to say tonight. You mentioned earlier that we needed to be concerned about what the international community thought about the policies of the Bush administration, and that is the point at which I stopped agreeing with you. I've traveled around the world. I've lived around the world. My wife is from a foreign country. Throughout a large percentage of my life, I've received feedback about what my country is and what it stands for from these people within the international community, people that live outside of the United States. And what I receive consistently from them is a view that what remains of the free market in this country, the right of the citizen to keep and bear arms, our relatively low tax rate, the absence of an insanely large welfare state, these are symbols of our immorality in the eyes of far too many people in the international community. So forgive me if I don't take them too seriously. Would we not be better served by looking to the principles upon which this country was built to defy the policies of the Bush administration rather than the opinion of socialists around the world?
I don't want to suggest that if everything that the Bush administration or any administration were doing were utterly consonant with our laws, tradition, and values, but because some portion of the international community were dissatisfied with it, that we should change it. Obviously, I don't mean to suggest that. And if you heard me say that, let me make clear, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that there is a narrative that has emerged, one piece of which signals and represents a source of rage that contributes to our national insecurity. What I am telling you, and I'm not here to convince you, what I am telling you is that whether you like the view that they take in other respects or not, whether you think they are good or bad people, whether you think their form of government is admirable or enviable or one that we should emulate or not, to the extent that we convert moderates to radicals, we disserve our national interest. That's what I'm saying.
Given the likely choices that we will have in November, and at least in my personal opinion, the fact that Barack Obama is going to be our next president, do you take any comfort in the idea that he at least used to teach constitutional law, or is this useless? Is it too late?
Let me tell you, teaching constitutional law is no guarantee, that's for sure.